Gods of the theater, smile on us.
You who sit up there stern in judgment, smile on us.
You who look down on actors, and who doesn't, bless this yearly festival and smile on us. We offer you song and dance.
Hello and welcome to Thespis in the Green Room, Season 2, Episode 13. It's Bruce and Melanie here. Hey, Melanie.
Hello, hello.
Hey, nice to hear you. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you very much. Doing all right. Hanging in there, the best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all anybody can ask for these days.
That's right. Well, today we are going to do something totally different and talk about a play.
Mm-hmm. That is so off-brand for us. I mean,
Yes,
what is this,
is.
a podcast about theater? I don't understand.
Oh, man. Well, of course, we do talk a lot about plays here on Thespis in the Green Room. But today we're going to discuss a play that is now available to watch on Amazon Prime Video. And that is called What the Constitution Means to Me.
Yeah, we came to this topic and this play in particular when we were researching plays and musicals about politics and politicians and elections because, it's that time of year again, kids.
It's been the time of year for the last 4 years, hasn't it?
I know, right? It never ends.
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
but of course we are coming up to election day, so we wanted to tie in today's topic with the elections.
Mm-hmm.
And we were looking at doing an episode, just kind of going through the various plays and musicals that cover the topics of elections and politicians.
Mm-hmm.
But then we came on to this one particular play that is now on Amazon Prime. And we decided we really want to take a deep dive into this piece and look at the whole thing and dedicate a whole episode to it.
Right, because it's also something that our audience members can take a look at themselves, and we can talk a little bit about it, and then they can actually dive deeper themselves and actually view it for themselves if they have Amazon Prime. I mean, I first heard about this particular play when I was thinking about going to New York a year ago or so, and everybody, a lot of the theater people, when they go to New York, they try to hit as many shows as they can. And so this was on the list that people were seeing that they loved. And I was like, wow, what an interesting title for one thing. And how does that sound like it could be interesting? You know what I mean? But reading a little bit about it and hearing the response of people that had seen it there on Broadway, I was like, this sounds like a real excellent choice to try and catch. Well, of course, Corona happened.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually get there. And I think this closed beforehand, but still, I thought, well, this would be something to keep in mind if it does tour or what have you. So yeah, it had been in the forefront of my mind.
Yeah. And I first heard about this play when it first came to Broadway. There were kind of advertisements and articles and whatnot on the playbill.com and Broadway World and all those websites. And then I remember seeing the clips from the show when the Tony Awards 2019 were coming out, and they were showing clips of all the nominated shows and performances.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember that. But I mean, I can honestly say that I didn't really look into it very much until I came across it on Amazon. For total transparency, I mean, I really thought when I first heard the title, What the Constitution Means to Me, I thought this could be like one or two things. This could be Schoolhouse Rock on,
right,
on stage,
which I hated. But anyway, go ahead.
I didn't hate that, but it's like, do I want to watch that now?
Right,
I don't know.
No,
I
knew.
It's great for kids. It's great for kids because it explains things for kids.
Right.
But I was kind of like, is this kind of like a Schoolhouse Rock thing on stage? Or the other thing I thought was, is this going to be like a beat you over the head, yell about politics thing?
Right.
Like it was like, it could be that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Part of me thought about,
know.
do you remember the Saturday morning cartoon clips that had to do with politics? And so I'm back with Saturday morning cartoons. I'm dating myself now, but like,
yeah, well, that was Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah, I guess it was, right? Is that so that? Well,
yeah.
Okay, I see what I
So,
was thinking. The musical Schoolhouse Rock. That's
Well, they had little ditties, little songs that
okay.
explained how things worked.
Mhm.
I remember there was that one really famous one about how a bill gets passed.
Right, exactly. That's the one I was thinking. And he was so depressed. But anyway.
The depressed bill.
But yeah, I kind of thought about along those lines as well. And I thought, well, this, like you said, it could be really interesting or really could be just like watching paint dry, but it was
Right.
also on Broadway. So there had to be something of value
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah, so I was a little skeptical, but then I saw it on Amazon Prime as we were researching these titles for today's episode. I was like, well, it's right here in front of my face and I'm a subscriber, so there's no extra cost for me to watch it. So
Hmm.
just, have your morning coffee and watch the thing. And wow,
Hmm.
I was completely transported and blown away and teach me to be skeptical.
Right, right. I concur because it
Keep
was,
an open
yeah,
mind, woman.
yeah, I know. I know. Yeah, I thought it was really, really well done too. So yeah, I totally, totally concur.
Well, let's get into a little bit of background so our listeners know what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So, What the Constitution Means to Me is a play written and performed by Heidi Schreck and directed by Oliver Butler. Playwright Heidi Schreck described the play. This was great. I watched this clip. You can watch this clip on YouTube. Heidi Schreck described the play on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. She described the show this way: a very personal love story about a teenage girl's bad romance with the Constitution.
Good grief.
And
That
this
is
was
just bizarre.
but it really does kind of sum it up.
Yeah.
So here's a little more context for those who haven't actually watched the show. So Shrek based this play on her experience as a teenager when she would participate in these oratorical contests at chapters of the American Legion. And the goal was to win prize money for her college fund, which she
It's
did
just
very
fascinating.
successfully. I
Yeah,
think
she
she
did.
said that
She paid for her education. That's right. Now she does preface it, with that it was state school, but
yeah,
nevertheless, she paid
yeah,
for her
yeah,
education. So I mean, it's
yeah.
amazing.
And it was a while ago.
Yeah.
So tuition has changed quite a bit over the last 20, 30 years.
Hmm.
But she was very successful at that and earned her college money through these contests. But really, that's just the jumping off point for this play. I mean, really and
Hmm.
truly. She connects her experience with and her knowledge of the Constitution with personal events throughout her life. And she also brings in the lives of her mother and grandmothers and great grandmothers. And then she also brings in stories from national headlines
Hmm.
and current topics. So she kind of ties it all together beautifully.
Yeah, she really does. Making it personal like that is so effective, and it's really good storytelling because it helps us to identify with her on a variety of levels. We all can picture relatives and scenarios that we all grew up with that maybe relate somewhat, and I think that helps just get you in and really kind of enwrap you in her story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to break that down a little bit more
Hmm.
further on in our discussion. So
Right.
we're going to explain why we thought this was such an impactful story.
Hmm.
But the play is primarily a monologue. So it's mainly her being her, but there is one supporting actor who plays the part of an American Legion representative, and he has a few other key moments in the play. And the finale of the piece, Shrek brings on a teenage debate champion, and they square off in this debate about whether or not we should keep the existing constitution or scrap it and create a new one,
Yeah,
which
which
is
is really fascinating.
fascinating.
It
Yeah,
really
yeah.
is. Now, the play it was first produced in 2017 at Clubbed Thumbs Summerworks in New York. Summerworks is a festival of new plays produced by Clubbed Thumb Theater Company, and this 2017 production was a co-production with True Love Productions. That following year, in the summer of 2018, the show then went to be performed at Berkeley Repertory Theater in California, after which, in the autumn of 2018, What the Constitution Means to Me moved back to New York and ran off Broadway, first at the New York Theater Workshop and then at the Greenwich House. It closed off Broadway on December 30th, 2018. In March of 2019, What the Constitution Means to Me began its Broadway run at the Helen Hayes Theater in New York, and the show closed on Broadway after 19 previews and 169 performances on August 24th, 2019. It then went on for a special engagement at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. In January of 2020, it played in Los Angeles and then moved to Chicago, where its run was interrupted by COVID-19, and it closed early on April 12th, 2020. What the Constitution Means to Me was scheduled to tour select U.S. cities after its Chicago run. That tour, which included a stop in Charlotte, North Carolina, has been postponed, of course, due to the pandemic. The show was professionally filmed during its run on Broadway and premiered on Amazon Prime Video on October 16th, 2020. So it hasn't been too long that it's been on Prime. So and
Mm-mm,
I think it's probably getting some really great views.
absolutely. Now, when it comes to awards and accolades, What the Constitution Means to Me was recognized by several organizations. It was nominated for the Lucille Lortel Award, the Drama League Award, Outer Critics Circle Award, Drama Desk Award, Tony Award, and the Glad Media Award. It won the Obie Award, the Off Broadway Alliance Award, and the New York Drama Critics Circle Award. The playwright Heidi Schreck received the 2018 Hull Warner Award from the Dramatists Guild of America Council. What the Constitution Means to Me was also a finalist for the 2019 Pulitzer Prize for Drama. Time magazine ranked the show number 5 on their 10 best theater performances of 2019.
Wow. Yeah, excellent. Heidi Schreck is the playwright and original cast of What the Constitution Means to Me. She is originally from Washington State and attended the University of Oregon. She spent time in Siberia teaching English and in St. Petersburg, Russia, as a journalist. As a writer, she has worked with Playwrights Horizons and Atlantic Theater Company. She's also written for television. As an actress, she worked on several off-Broadway productions prior to What the Constitution Means to Me. She and her husband live in Park Slope, Brooklyn. Wow. Well, it's interesting. She ties all of her biography of her life really throughout this piece too. I mean, you'll learn about a lot of these things through the production too, which really gives you a personal glimpse of her life and her growing up and the journeys that she's had.
It is the seed for the whole show.
It really is. It's kind of interesting. You almost wonder, could this piece be done by anyone else? Do you know what I mean? Because it is such a personal
Well, she
piece.
does have the tour has a different actor in it, I believe, and she does have an understudy,
Oh, really?
or she did
Okay.
have an understudy on Broadway. So yeah, I mean, clearly somebody else. I mean, it's got to be a little bit weird.
Yeah. Right.
It's
I know.
because it's a biographical play, and you're working with the playwright slash performer that it's about, and then she's
hmm
out sick or whatever, and then you have to. Yeah, it's got to be strange, but but
Well,
yeah,
it's
they
called
have.
acting for a reason. I mean, you're acting, you become
Oh
a
yeah.
character, but it is interesting when you get a chance to view a piece that is by a talented actress, which is about the talented actress, you know what I mean? So it just has a whole nother level to it, I think.
Yeah.
So let's discuss some of the current topics and how this relates to the play.
Right, because it's really interesting the way she structured it because she never calls out any particular politician or public figure. She doesn't really do that,
Mm-mm.
and yet just by nature of talking about this document and the history of it and how it's been applied or not been applied, it inevitably the undertones of what's happening today and what's in the headlines today and what we're all experiencing today, I mean, it makes it so much more it just intensifies the message.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, of course, it's the Constitution, so
hmm
that ties directly into the Supreme Court, which, of course, has been all over the news lately because
Absolutely.
we just got a new Supreme Court justice. No matter how you feel about that, we do have one.
hmm
And,
Right.
so that's a huge one, and just law in general, and
Yeah, and the topics, of course, that she's discussing that she dealt with in her life, of course, deal with women's rights and abortion rights. And then she also introduces marriage equality. So, I mean, it's very topical, of course. I mean, even though this is basically a play that's based on her experience years ago, these topics are still very much in the news. They've come a long way, of course, in how people feel about them and the support of them and all that kind of thing. But they're still, of course, very topical and very controversial.
mhm. I mean, one thing I took away from this show, never really heard this term before, was the idea of negative rights versus positive rights.
Yes, right. That's something I hadn't heard either. Yeah.
The Constitution isn't really in its current form, it's not really structured for positive rights. It's structured for negative rights. And what that means is in theory. I mean, obviously,
Right.
people could argue that this is happening,
Hmm.
but in theory, you're not supposed to be thrown in jail and held in jail for no reason. You have the right to bear
Hmm.
arms, of course, and all these rights that the government can't infringe upon is what negative
Hmm.
rights means. The government can't
Right.
force itself on you in this way. You have certain liberties. That's what it means by negative rights. But when we say positive rights, that's more of what the government will supply to you,
Hmm.
what it will give you, how it will protect you. Like healthcare would be a positive right, which is
Hmm.
of course a hot button issue these
Right.
days. So it's very interesting that our like the document isn't really it's not so much structured for positive rights. It's structured for negative rights, meaning the government isn't meant to force you into certain situations or take things away from you. But it's not necessarily supposed to give you things. Not
Exactly.
really.
And I'd never heard it framed that way. So that was
Mhm.
really kind of interesting and helps you, I guess, helps you look at it a little bit differently as to how it was designed than how the document was designed.
Mhm. So the play brings up a lot of current topics
Hmm.
between the Supreme Court and the rights of various groups of people, women, people of color, LGBTQIA. So it touches on all these different identities in these groups of people and how they are or are not served by the Constitution.
Hmm. Right.
And not just that, but also how the Constitution is interpreted because I mean that's really the crux of it, isn't it? It's not just the document itself, it's how do you interpret it?
Exactly, right. And that's the job of the Supreme Court. And of course, when the document was written, everybody knows it was written by a bunch of middle-aged white men. So, I mean, back
Right.
when the representation wasn't for all of these other groups of people, they
Yeah,
weren't,
they weren't even included. She
yeah,
talked about that at length,
yeah,
how her body was not even included. It wasn't even a thing because she was a female. So there's nothing that covers specifically covers her as a woman. Like
right.
there's no mention of women, as there's no specific mention of children.
Right.
It's just not mentioned. So clearly it was written at a certain I mean, it's kind of the same argument that, when you think about religious text, like this is constantly an argument about how to interpret religious text and why we have so many different variations
Hmm.
of even the same religion. You got different denominations of Christianity, you've got different denominations of Judaism, you got different denominations of it's like it's how do you interpret this?
Right. Right.
So that's the argument. And we could talk about that in the theater world. I mean,
Right.
we could look at older texts, we could look at Shakespeare and other older texts, and it's all about interpretation. How do we analyze this and interpret this, and what do we think this means?
Hmm. The difference with this, of course, and with the Constitution is that you want to interpret it in a way that it's beneficial to everybody. So you now have to take in,
One would
you
hope,
know,
but then again, that
one would
depends
hope,
on
exactly,
your
right.
standpoint. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like it's really a fascinating topic in
yeah.
and of itself, and then and the way she addresses it in the play and explains it and the illustrations. And let's get into that a little bit. Let's talk about the structure of the storytelling. And this is why there was such an impact. So, I've broken down the structure of this play into three different segments. The first segment is she's playing herself as a
Mhm.
kid doing these contests, right?
Right.
So she's very positive, she's very upbeat, she's very smiley, she's fun. She's fun
Mhm,
to be around when she's in
mhm.
that character, you know.
Right,
I mean, she's addressing you as an adult, and then she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna be the kid now," and she preps you for that. But the whole time it's very smiley, it's very upbeat, it's very, and so we as the audience get to like her. We've got this fun energy. It's a lighthearted energy. It's engaging. It's entertaining. It's
mhm. It's a
endearing.
fascination too with a
Yeah.
kid who's got such knowledge of the
Mhm,
Constitution, which
mhm.
is not something ordinary.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And she's got this wonder and excitement that is contagious for the audience. Like, we can get involved with that.
right.
So I think we really get invested with her as a character, and we're in. She's got us hooked. Like,
Yep,
she's adorable. We love
yeah.
her. She's a positive, happy. It's good times.
Mhm.
And then in the second segment of the play, she moves from that energy and that kid, and she goes she goes deep. She gets deeply personal. So we
Absolutely.
move from happy, fun kid having fun at these contests and the comedy and the joy that goes with all that to getting some really deeply personal, difficult stories.
Right. Which so many of us can relate to as we grow older, because it's
Mhm.
kind of the natural transition through life of being a carefree kid, hopefully, and
Mhm.
then becoming an adult and dealing with adult issues that you have to begin to navigate through,
Mhm.
and make decisions, independent decisions and personal decisions. And you have to develop your belief structure and all of those things that aren't happy and lighthearted,
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
and we all can identify with.
Right. It gets very heavy, and she oscillates between these painful personal narratives and these public narratives. So she's talking about herself and she's talking about women in her family throughout the years and
Mhm.
these very personal, heavy, emotional stories and issues. But she's oscillating between that and more public narratives, headlines, national cases, Supreme
Mhm.
Court records and recordings. So she's kind of going back and forth. But it's a heavier mood than where we started. But I tell you, that's smart structure though, because we're invested now. By the time we get to the second part of the play, we're invested
Mhm.
because we like her from the first part. We
Right.
were having fun. It's kind of like that in real life too when you meet people. If you meet somebody and your first impression of them is, oh my God, they're Eeyore, they're like
Right.
heavy
Yeah,
and dark
exactly.
and sad,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, this energy, So of course it's easier for us to get invested in people when we enjoy their company first, when it's a little lighter, it's a little easier at first. And then as we get to know them, then we can go into deeper, darker places with them,
Sure, because
emotionally.
everybody has them, and
Yeah, of course.
it's again just the kind of the perspective of and how you live your life, and it's different for everybody, of course, but you hope people have a combination of experiences so that their life isn't all bad, all negative,
Oh, right. Yeah,
that they
of
have
course.
good experiences in their life as well, that they can find joy and friendship and all those types of things that make, life worthwhile, because there is hardship
Mhm.
for everybody, but you hope it's balanced with other things. And we do see that balance with her.
Right. And that's the trick. It's about the
Hmm.
balance. And
Hmm.
it's about the starting place. And I think that's why this is so effective because if we had if we had started this play, if we'd gone into the theater or turned on our Amazon and
Right.
started this and started this play with somebody like yelling at us, it would have
Yeah.
been too much off the bat. So we
Right.
had fun first and
Hmm.
we eased into this and we got invested. And then we're able to handle this more emotional place that we go to.
Hmm.
And so I think that was a very smart structure. And then she moves into what I consider the third part of the play, which is the debate section. And this is where she gets the audience directly involved. I
Super
mean,
smart.
it is audience participation.
Which I'm not a big fan for in shows, you know what I mean? I wanna be an observer, but this particular production, I think it really lends itself to that, and it just worked really well.
Well, you don't have to overtly be involved, but
Right,
what you become is you become a football fan. You're like cheering for a team here. You're getting invested in this debate competition that's happening on stage.
right.
And because she has set you up so well with the personal as well as the academic prior to this. So you've come in, the audience now has a new academic understanding of the Constitution as well as understanding the personal impact that the Constitution can have on people's
Right.
lives. You've got all that background now. She's prepped you so well for that in the first 2 sections of this play. You've got all that. So when the debate starts, you as the audience, you're in it. You know what it means. You know what they're talking about. You know the impact of it. I mean,
Mhm.
so you can truly engage and you can pick your side and cheer, or you can get excited for both sides. You can get really invested in that contest, and I think that's really, really a brilliant structure.
And you walk away with a pocket constitution.
Yes, you
She
do.
hands those out in the audience,
He handed
so you can
those out.
follow along. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think that was super smart because it really deepens the audience's engagement in the material and it aids in securing a lasting impact.
Absolutely.
Really good stuff. And for those people who respond well to numbers and statistics, the streaming version also adds that in. I don't know if people in the actual theater experience got so much of this, but at the end they post before the credits roll, they post some figures that add credence to your whole experience. You get some
Right.
numbers and some statistics. And some people really respond well to show me the numbers,
Right.
and
Exactly. Yeah.
so I think that just adds to a level of credibility to the whole thing as well. So overall, I just thought it was really, really smart the way that she structured this journey was a journey for the audience.
And you know how some plays and performances don't lend itself well to videotaping, and this really did because it's kind of a simple production as far as bells and whistles and scenery and set and all that kind of thing. You're able to really focus on the material because you're not distracted by all these other
Yeah,
elements, and it really lends itself well, and it's so engaging that it just flies by too. I mean, it just really is really well done.
it does. And just so our listeners know if they tune in, it's a one act. It's only an what was it like an hour 40 something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty almost like that's almost like a full length in a way, I mean, as far
Well,
as
it's a full
its
length,
length,
but it's
but
straight through. There's no
it is straight
intermission.
through, that's
It,
correct,
it and it's not like a 3 hour engagement.
right,
I mean,
mhm,
it's about an hour 40 minutes, I think, or hour 45 minutes, something like that.
mhm,
And I'd also want to mention that if you watch it on Amazon, you get one guest debater that joins her at the end. But there's bonus materials because she's got two. There's two that did the Broadway show. There's two different teenage debate champions that join her, and they obviously alternated which shows. But if you want to catch the other person that she had debate with her, that's in the bonus material, so you can
right.
watch that as well. So I was impressed, Bruce. I really
Me
was.
too, me too. I'm so glad that I, got to see it this way because I really thought once it closed, then that, "Oh, that's one that I might not really ever get to see." So, the
Mhm.
fact that they did this and put it on Amazon Prime, I think was really, really great, and I hope there's more productions coming like this.
Yeah, and we were talking about this before we recorded that this might have been a little bit easier to record than some of the other Broadway shows
Sure.
because it was a smaller production.
Yeah, that's right. And if it's a more of a classic piece, like say a classic musical or what have you, there's just so many rights issues that have to be hammered
Yes.
out, and then production issues, and on and on it goes. Where, like we were talking, you said, I mean, she wrote this piece, she stars in it, she has the rights to it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's a lot less. I'm sure
Red
still
tape.
lots of red tape, but there's a lot less of it. That they had to get in order for this to happen, and it is an easier piece to film just because of by nature of the setting and so on. So yeah.
And can I just say it was on Broadway at the Helen Hayes Theater and it was filmed at the Helen Hayes Theater. They filmed the Broadway production. And that's where I used to work.
Yeah, that must have been neat for you to just kind of visit it that way, you
It was
know?
funny because when I started watching the show, the theater has had a total makeover since I was there because I was there back in the early aughts, like it's been
Right,
a while.
sure.
But I was an usher at that theater. For those who don't know, at the Helen Hayes on Broadway, I was an usher there for 8 years, from
Mm,
2000 to 2008 when I lived in New York,
that's
and
cool.
but it had a complete makeover since then. So I was looking at the theater, and I didn't realize that's where it was when I started watching it. But I'm looking at him like that kind of looks like the Helen Hayes, but it's not quite the Helen Hayes. It's not the right color on the inside. I'm like, is that the Helen
Right.
Hayes? And then afterwards, I had to go look it up. I was like, yes, it
Oh,
was
that's
the
neat.
Helen Hayes.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
that was just a little personal moment for me. I was like,
Mhm.
oh,
Uh,
yeah.
Very cool, very cool. Well, it still may tour, it may be returning,
Yeah.
to tour when things lift and COVID is conquered and or in order, and
Hmm.
and life gets back to some semblance of normal and tours begin again. So hopefully, because I think it's one of those pieces that because there's so much information in it too,
Hmm.
seeing it again and again will again still affect you, and you'll still continue to learn new information and just kind of be able to help form your own opinion on on this subject.
And you know what? I think it'll date well. And
Oh
I think
yeah,
it's a testament
yeah.
because she wrote this in 2017 originally,
Hmm.
but it's still and in some of the interviews I was watching on YouTube that she did about this, she's talking about how she hasn't really changed it.
Right. I mean, the information is remaining the same from 30 years ago.
But it's interesting how it doesn't date. And I think that part of that is because she doesn't name names, she doesn't bring up particular politicians or figures that we're seeing in the headlines. So it dates really well. I think so you could see this in a couple of years' time. And what's going to change is your reaction as the audience, because as we live through history now, whatever happens with this election, whatever happens with the next Supreme Court, decision or whatever, that will hit the headlines and that will impact us however it will, and it'll impact our society and so forth, and that's what will change. So if we go back to see it a couple of years from now, our reaction might be different because we've had some events since then that have
Sure.
influenced how we think about this. So
And it might be interesting if some things do change, if there are some amendments that occur, how she might then have to include, she might have to make some adaptations or adjustments to her piece if there's some changes.
if there are some changes, but we're still waiting for equal rights for women to be ratified. So,
Right.
you know,
True. I know.
we're still waiting.
And that's crazy. I mean, that's just crazy.
So that still hasn't been
Mhm.
completed. So we're still struggling there. And that's kind of some of the argument they get into when they have the debate about whether to scrap the Constitution or not. Can you even imagine trying to? We can't even get the amendments that have been on the table for decades. We can't even get those
Exactly.
finalized.
Yeah, how in the
So
world would we start over? My
get
gosh.
started at the beginning.
Oh my
But I
word.
don't know. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? You're right. Yeah. Somebody smarter than us would have to come in with some things really laid out well.
Well, it would. I mean, I honestly feel like if they wanted to do that, that somebody would have to draft something up.
Mhm.
And but even that, the draft that came in, can you imagine
The
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 arguing and
debating
the
over
back
the
and
draft.
forth?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
I
man.
mean, some days I'm amazed that we're functioning at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to even appoint a justice, let alone, a constitution. My word.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
But it would be fascinating.
mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, it would. Yeah,
I can,
absolutely would.
that's what I love about this debate. It really kind of shows you all these different angles to it. And I mean, I can see them all. I can see these various perspectives. I kind of get it.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
and a lot of them make sense. So,
Yeah, and that's good too because it doesn't make a decision for you. It
right.
just makes you think. It brings up
It just
conversation,
lays
which
it
is
out for you.
yeah, which is what, good theater does and in
Right.
every kind of topic that it presents. It just lays it out there so that you can talk about it and form a opinion or have a lively discussion and just grow that way.
It really stimulates some deep thinking on this topic.
Mhm.
So, I think it shines a light on some things that we don't really think about very often, if we even knew about them at all.
Right.
I definitely got some new information out of this.
Yeah. So go watch What the Constitution Means to Me on Amazon Prime.
It's on Amazon Prime, and if you want to visit the show's website, it is at constitutionbroadway.com. So you can check out their website and keep an eye on their tour because they have their tour dates listed there. And I think they're going to try to get back to that. Right now, Charlotte, which is the nearest location to us, which isn't too far if we
No,
manage
not
to
at all.
get the tour back on schedule.
Yeah.
It would be awesome. I mean, from where I am in Spartanburg, it's only about an hour and a half up to Charlotte, so
Right.
that would be great.
Absolutely.
So you can keep an eye on all that on their website.
Well, that was fun. That was a great discussion and nice to
Yeah.
kind of talk about a piece of theater because we haven't got to see much in a while.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to kind of feel like we did see some, which we did,
Yeah.
and in this way and have a discussion about it. And I hope people will take a chance and give it a watch.
Yeah. It's definitely worth your time. Check it out. And it's just nice to run into a piece of theater that is thought provoking like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, until we dig up the next one to talk about,
Indeed.
yeah, I guess that's about all for now.
All right.
We'll hear you again.
We'll hear you again soon, Bruce.
All right, Melanie, have a good evening. We'll see
You
you.
too.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Thespis in the Green Room is a Courageous Crossings production. Music used in this podcast is licensed by ASCAP and BMI.
In 1787, I'm told our founding fathers did agree to write a list of principles for keeping people free. The USA was just starting out a whole brand new country, and so our people spelled it out, the things that we should be.
And they put those principles down on paper and called it the Constitution. And it's been helping us run our country ever since then. The first part of the Constitution is called the Preamble and tells what those founding fathers set out to do.